The night began with a silence so perfect it felt staged. Over the sleeping suburbs of Moscow, clouds hung low and motionless. Not a siren, not a whisper, only the steady hum of generators along the perimeter of Chkalovsky Airfield, the pride of Russia's military aviation. The base was a fortress of steel and tarmac, housing reconnaissance aircraft, fuel convoys, and radar command vehicles worth billions. Yet that night, it looked almost peaceful under the sodium glow. Operators leaned back in their chairs, screens flickering with faint green static. To them, it was another uneventful shift, until a ripple appeared across their radar scopes. 1, then 5, then 20 blips. At first, they dismissed it as interference. But within seconds, those blips multiplied into hundreds. A whisper of confusion filled the control room, the kind that precedes panic. At precisely 02:17 a.m., the first alarm howled. Somewhere hundreds of kilometers away, in the darkness of Ukrainian skies, 317 drones had just come alive. From secret fields near Poltava and Chernihiv, the swarm lifted like a metallic storm. FPV units, long-range Magura models, and prototype Boba strike drones rose in unison, their wings glinting faintly against the moonlight. Each carried a payload between 15 and 25 kilograms of high-explosive compound, guided by AI flight patterns synced to satellite feeds. The hum built into a tremor that shook the ground beneath the launch teams. Pilots monitored telemetry through handheld consoles, altitude steady at 200 feet, velocity at 480 miles per hour, heading due north. Within 5 minutes, radar across Russia's western districts began to light up. Lines of defense stretched from Bryansk to Tula scrambled in confusion, unable to distinguish decoys from the real strike vectors. Inside Ukrainian command centers, screens flickered with blue trails, hundreds of them converging toward one point, Moscow's Chkalovsky Airfield, a nerve center valued at $3 billion, housing command aircraft and elite transport fleets. The mission objective: disable it, humiliate it, and prove that no fortress is beyond reach. As the first drones crossed the border, Russia's early warning systems activated. Searchlights tore through the clouds, tracing empty arcs. Anti-air batteries rotated like restless beasts. Within moments, the air around Moscow was alive with invisible movement. 70 drones were intercepted before reaching the city limits, but the rest, nearly 250, kept coming, weaving, dropping altitude, splitting into clusters of 5 and 7. Targets confirmed, vector locked, a Ukrainian operator muttered through static. The swarm's AI adjusted flight patterns to exploit radar blind spots, each unit communicating with others through encrypted pulses. In the control tower of Chkalovsky, panic spread. Controllers barked coordinates while pilots scrambled to move aircraft away from the fuel depots, but it was already too late. At 02:53 a.m., the first drone broke through the perimeter, descending at 200 feet, Mach 0.9. Its impact tore open a hangar roof, detonating inside a maintenance bay. A column of flame erupted, painting the sky orange. Cameras caught the explosion from miles away. And then chaos multiplied. One after another, the drones rained down. The airfield became a grid of fire. Each detonation precise. Fuel tanks, radar domes, command trailers. "They're hitting the brain, not the body," one Russian officer whispered before the feed cut. Ukrainian command watched in silence as satellite images refreshed every 30 seconds, revealing concentric circles of damage. 23 aircraft, including Ilyushin transports and surveillance planes, went up in flames. Every blast cost Ukraine less than $20,000. Each destroyed target was worth millions. On the ground, emergency crews moved under falling debris. The air was thick with carbon and burning oil. Static drowned out communication lines as one drone slammed into the control tower's west face, shattering glass in a cascade that glittered against the inferno below. For 10 full minutes, Chkalovsky was blind. "Screens went black," one intercepted radio call said. "We've lost visual, we've lost command." Meanwhile, the second phase was already in motion. Far to the south, Ukrainian special operations units began a synchronized digital strike. In underground command nodes outside Kiev, teams deployed malware into Russian radar grids through compromised relays. Within seconds, air defense sectors reported ghost signals, entire swarms appearing and vanishing at random. The confusion was deliberate. "Make them shoot at shadows," one operator said, fingers dancing over keyboards. Across the same window of time, 6 British-supplied Storm Shadow missiles were launched from Su-24 aircraft over Dnipro, flying low at 30 meters altitude, Mach 2.9. They skimmed tree lines, invisible to radar using terrain-following sensors. Their targets, the runway intersections and central fuel reserves of Chkalovsky. When they arrived, the sky was already burning, but their precision turned chaos into annihilation. Each warhead, designed for hardened targets, punched through concrete before erupting with tungsten fire. Drone footage later revealed the aftermath: craters 40 feet deep, smoke rising like pillars in a destroyed temple. At the same moment, Russian air defense coordination collapsed. Power outages rolled across multiple bases as jamming frequencies flooded the network. Generators sputtered, backup lines failed. "All systems unresponsive," a panicked voice recorded from a control center muttered before cutting out. It was not just an airstrike anymore. It was digital warfare in its purest form. Surveillance satellites registered blank zones where data once pulsed. Even encrypted command lines between Moscow and the base flickered off. The fog of war wasn't smoke, it was silence. By the time Russian technicians rebooted their systems, they realized they were no longer looking at a battle, but an autopsy. The first stage of Ukraine's operation had worked with mathematical precision. But Ukraine wasn't finished. On the Black Sea, a small fleet of unmanned naval drones moved silently beneath the surface. Their mission: create radar illusions, fake attack signatures to overload Russian coastal defenses. From Sevastopol to Novorossiysk, sirens blared as phantom echoes appeared across radar grids. Commanders launched interceptor missiles worth over $8 million at empty coordinates. Each minute spent firing at ghosts meant fewer resources defending the real target hundreds of kilometers inland. Every decoy bought 10 seconds of truth for the real attack, a Ukrainian strategist later explained. By the time Russia realized it was a feint, the swarm over Moscow was entering its terminal phase. Inside the airfield perimeter, surviving personnel tried to mount a counteraction. MiG-31 interceptors, worth $40 million each, were scrambled into the blackened sky, engines howling. They climbed to 30,000 feet, their R-37 long-range missiles armed and ready. Each missile cost nearly $1 million, and each was fired into nothing. The drones flew too low, too many, too erratically. "They're below radar, sir," one pilot radioed before being forced to abort due to heavy smoke. From Kiev's perspective, this was Phase 3, overwhelm, confuse, and retreat before retaliation could stabilize. Yet even as the first wave ended, Ukrainian command detected new movements on satellite feeds, additional Russian aircraft mobilizing from alternate bases. The mission's success wasn't just destruction, it was disruption. The entire Russian air defense grid around the capital had been stretched, bled, and blinded within 2 hours. But then, something new appeared on the radar. Anomalous returns, large, fast, and heading west. "Possible counterstrike inbound," one analyst said quietly. The next chapter was already writing itself. The anomaly was massive, a returning signature from the east, larger than any drone cluster Ukraine had deployed that night. Analysts watched it streak across the map at Mach 1.8, climbing fast. It wasn't a swarm. It was a counterstrike. Within minutes, Ukrainian radar teams confirmed multiple Tu-95 Bear bombers lifting from Engels Air Base, their silhouettes long and cold against the radar horizon. They carried Kh-101 cruise missiles, 7.5 meters long, 2,200 kilos each, with a range of 3,000 kilometers. Cost roughly $13 million per missile. The retaliation had begun. At 05:10 a.m., Russia fired its first volley. 27 missiles roared westward, hugging treetops, heading for Ukrainian drone command relays in Sumy and Khmelnytsky. Yet this time, the response was already waiting. Mobile radar vans tracked the wave, and air defense systems, NASAMS, IRIS-T, and Buk M1, locked on. The sky above central Ukraine turned into a battlefield of invisible mathematics. Missile trails carved silver arcs in the dawn air. At 8,000 feet, Ukrainian interceptors met them head-on. IRIS-T missiles, moving at Mach 3, struck targets with pinpoint accuracy. One by one, the Russian Kh-101s disintegrated into incandescent fragments. Explosions flickered silently above villages just waking to sunlight. Of the 27 missiles, 21 were intercepted. 6 slipped through. One hit an unoccupied relay station. Another struck an abandoned warehouse used as a drone assembly site. The remaining 4 were neutralized by electronic interference, their guidance jammed mid-flight, spiraling harmlessly into open fields. In Kiev, the war rooms exhaled. Ukraine had survived the counterpunch. But in Moscow, frustration ignited into fury. Orders were issued to deploy interceptors across the capital's perimeter. Every eye now turned toward the smoking ruin of Chkalovsky Airfield, the image circulating on encrypted telegram channels. hangars gutted, aircraft skeletal, fuel tanks still burning. What had been a fortress was now an emblem of vulnerability. By dawn, the full extent of the damage became visible from orbit. Satellite passes revealed a destruction radius of nearly 1.5 kilometers. 3 major hangars collapsed entirely, 11 aircraft reduced to molten frames, and a runway cratered beyond use. Analysts estimated financial losses exceeding $3 billion. But the cost ran deeper. Command paralysis, shaken morale, broken rhythm. For the first time, Russia's capital defense network had been breached, not by stealth bombers or hypersonic weapons, but by hundreds of low-cost drones, each the size of a suitcase. Every analyst repeated the same line that morning: "The battlefield has been democratized." It was a new kind of arithmetic, precision bought not with money, but with ingenuity. And behind every operation, there were human faces. Young Ukrainian engineers, often under 30, coding in basements, stitching together open-source technology with fragments of commercial hardware. "This isn't just war," one intelligence officer told a Western correspondent. "It's software versus steel." Still, Moscow's response was swift and severe. Within hours, air defense drills expanded across multiple regions. S-400 batteries repositioned to cover strategic zones, and counter-drone measures intensified around key installations. Yet the psychological toll was immediate. Residents posted videos of the glowing horizon, orange plumes towering like dawn made of fire. State media aired emergency broadcasts promising complete retaliation. In Kiev, the mood was colder, clinical. Ukraine's Joint Operations Command began assessing secondary waves, this time aimed not at airfields but logistics hubs feeding Moscow's supply arteries. Intelligence confirmed congestion on major supply lines due to internal lockdowns. The opportunity window was narrow, 2 hours of confusion before Russia recalibrated. And so Phase 4 began, the second wave. From hidden launch sites near Sumy and Myrhorod, another 120 drones took off, this time flying low and wide, bypassing the ruined Chkalovsky sector and targeting fuel convoys, storage silos, and radar repair depots. These weren't large payload carriers, but fast FPV suicide drones, agile, unpredictable, nearly silent. Each cost under $15,000, guided by frontline operators watching through goggle feeds. The footage was clinical, almost surgical. Convoys of supply trucks along the Oriel Highway vanished in flashes of white light. Camera drones followed, capturing shockwaves rippling through wheat fields. Russian response teams deployed electronic countermeasures, but many systems had been compromised in the previous night's cyber attack. "Our jammers are fried," one intercepted Russian message read. "We can't stop them." Ukraine's command observed the chaos unfold in real time, coordinates updating every 15 seconds. What had started as a single strike had evolved into a rolling blackout of logistics, a paralysis creeping eastward. In response, Russia activated what it called Operation Nebo, a mass scramble of interceptor drones and Mi-28 Havoc helicopters armed with 30mm cannons. They hunted in pairs, sweeping tree lines and valleys. The footage, later leaked, showed tracer fire cutting through mist as helicopters tried to chase invisible ghosts. But drones aren't built for dogfights. They vanish, hide, wait. Many Ukrainian operators flew their units into wooded areas, cutting engines, then reactivating after pursuit passed. Others self-detonated near infrastructure points to create diversions. One drone, nicknamed Ghost 47, reportedly flew over 400 kilometers autonomously after losing contact, striking a radar relay near Kaluga, its final act recorded by orbiting reconnaissance. By the time the second wave subsided, over 30 logistics nodes were confirmed damaged. The total Russian expenditure in intercepts exceeded $120 million. Ukrainian cost under $3 million. At 06 meters a.m., Moscow time, the fires at Chkalovsky still burned. Columns of smoke rose 30 stories high, visible from the city outskirts. Fire suppression vehicles lined the runways, spraying foam over craters that still smoldered. Journalists were denied access, but satellite imagery didn't wait for permission. Within hours, photos flooded Western media. One headline read, "The night Moscow's sky turned against it." For Ukraine, the symbolism was larger than the strike itself. It was proof of concept that asymmetry, not parity, defined the new age of warfare. A $20,000 drone could nullify a 50 million aircraft. An operator in a basement could threaten a superpower's air command. And behind the numbers lay something even more profound: psychological equilibrium. For a nation invaded, the strike was both message and mirror. We can reach you now. Yet amid the triumph, caution lingered. Ukrainian commanders knew retaliation would be relentless. Russia's arsenal remained vast. Even as smoke rose from the airfield, new directives emerged. Electronic warfare escalation, long-range missile redeployment, cyber countermeasures. But Ukraine's advantage lay in mobility. Unlike static systems, its drone network was fluid. Hundreds of independent cells operating under a shared digital map, constantly updating, constantly learning. We don't fight with walls, one coordinator said. We fight with waves. The moral contrast sharpened when images surfaced of captured Russian pilots treated for burns in Ukrainian field hospitals. Medical crews gave them water, blankets, morphine. One young pilot, barely 23, asked through tears, "Why didn't you kill us?" The medic answered quietly, "Because we're not you." That moment spread through encrypted forums, a flicker of humanity in a war driven by machines. By afternoon, the global narrative had shifted. Analysts on international networks called it the dawn of post-industrial warfare. Nations watched, recalibrating their defense doctrines. Military theorists compared the operation to the rise of gunpowder, disruptive, unstoppable, redefining cost and control. In Washington, London, and Warsaw, meetings convened to study the mechanics of Ukraine's swarm coordination. A senior defense official remarked, "They just turned $3 billion into smoke with what most armies spend on a weekend exercise." Yet the deeper question wasn't about destruction, it was about evolution. Every strike rewrote the ethics of distance. The machines had no faces, no hesitation, no fear. The men behind them, though, did. One Ukrainian pilot, interviewed anonymously, said, "Every time I send one, I think, that's a house, a son, a father down there. But we didn't start this. We're ending what they began." And as night fell again over the blackened airfield, the final line of the day's report summed it all up in cold precision. 317 drones launched, 248 reaching target, 27 intercepted, an entire command base neutralized. Casualties unknown. The age of massive armies was giving way to invisible fleets of code and carbon fiber. The sound of war had changed forever. It no longer roared like thunder. It whispered like wings over darkness.